You're listening to the Catholic Family Podcast. From the archives, vintage talks and sermons from the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s.
I was priest in underground church because, as you know, in communist countries, if you want to exercise your priesthood, you have to make serious compromise with the communist government, which I didn't want to make. That's only solution for me was to study in underground seminary to be ordained in 1968. Then after 11 years of my active work for the church, I was betrayed by one priest who was collaborating with the government. Then I had to flee my country in 1979 after 14 interrogations. The secret policemen, they confiscated all my property, especially religious articles and books and all devotional subjects. They tried to put me on trial, and I was lucky to get out of my country in good time. Then I came to Yugoslavia, from Yugoslavia to Austria, from Austria to Italy. And then from Italy I was sent by Jesuits because in Italy I joined Slovak Jesuit fathers, and they sent me to our headquarters in Canada, Cambridge. From Canada I went for almost 2 years to know American Jesuit communities here in Pennsylvania, in New York State, and Philadelphia is also Pennsylvania. Chicago also, I was in Chicago Jesuit community. Then I was assigned to be priest, co-pastor in Toronto, Slovak parish in Toronto City in Ontario. Then, my dear brethren, as you know, I was saying new Mass, but I have to remind you I was ordained in traditional Mass in 68. But then in Canada and in the United States I saw so many abuses concerning the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, so many disrespects for the most sublime mystery which we have on this earth, which is the Holy Sacrifice. There are many those abuses which I could not tolerate anymore. Holy Communion into the hands, extraordinary ministers, and many other requests from people. They ask me to say polka Mass, jazz Mass, and etc. When you see today you have clown Mass. But the main point was I had serious doubts about the validity of consecration, especially of the precious blood, because there are serious doubts that the consecration is not valid, because nobody has a right to change the words spoken by our blessed Lord Jesus Christ. And those reasons led me to join traditional movement in Canada. First, there were groups supporting Archbishop Lefebvre, Society of St. Pius X, but I never became member. I was always good friend of the society. But then later, when I got information about the other bishops, other groups, then I understood that their theology is even more Catholic than that of Society of St. Pius X. I contacted Bishop McKenna. I contacted a nice group in Spokane, and now I'm here.
I was wondering, when you was in the underground church, where would you have Mass like?
Mass, we had Mass everywhere. In our private houses, it was a room specially dedicated just for the Mass and for those meetings with priests, nuns, or seminarians and lay people who were interested in Catholic theology. Or even in apartment, just in one corner you had a special table dedicated only for the sacrifice of the Holy Mass. Then we have to prepare the whole altar, put statues, and it was always some kind of improvisation. But the substance was there.
Through the group itself, how did you communicate? Did you have codes and stuff like that to be able to detect it?
Yes, sometimes you need to establish a code of communication on telephone, and therefore you can even use telephone, but you don't talk directly about the topic issue. You use some kind of code, okay, and they know when I'm talking about good weather, what does it mean, you know? And when I'm talking about bad weather, they also know what that means. And there are many those codes which are still functioning in my country. And then also you have in letters you have codes. When you write a letter, they understand when I put special greetings, what does it mean, what that greeting means, and there are system which sometimes is very good, sometimes not so easy to deliver.
How hard was it to recruit the new members, or was it pretty touchy as far as who you let in?
It was very simple on one side. You have to first visit some churches, and when you see some young people who really are dedicated to the Blessed Sacrament, who really take seriously our Catholic religion, then somebody from our lay people approaches him or her and just try to communicate, to be friendly for 6 months. After 6 months, if we got information that he really is a serious Catholic, then he is introduced to priest after 6 months. And then it is duty of priest to continue communication.
How many priests and bishops would you say there's still in Czechoslovakia that are still traditional?
I believe there are at least 20 underground bishops, definitely more than 150 priests.
Would they be traditional, or would they be the new type of religion?
That is the tragedy, that's the problem. Most of them are Novus Ordo priests and bishops. You have to understand, in my country, in communist country, generally speaking, the Rome was always the only hope for those people. They didn't expect help from the government because the government betrayed us. Our only hope for Catholics was Rome. And therefore it's so difficult to convince people in my country that even Rome is not hope these days, that Rome betrayed us. And therefore it's not easy for them to accept that maybe this man who occupies seat of Peter is not true Pope. It is psychologically almost impossible. And therefore, unfortunately, we all switch to Novus Ordo situation because of obedience. But only now I understand how false is that notion of false obedience. I think our faith must have more priority than false obedience, and especially our dedication to the sacred tradition is more important than false obedience.
Were there nuns over there, or were they allowed to wear habits, or did you have to always wear plain clothes?
There are nuns again, they are not allowed to wear habit. There are nuns who are older nuns who belonged long ago, communists took power to some religious congregation, but they are gradually dying out, there are very few of them. But there are also nuns in underground church. They wear habits only when they have meetings. On the streets, no, they wear civil dress.
During Mass, did you wear plain clothes, or were you allowed to? Could you wear vestments, or?
It depends. When we had some kind of security around the house, we put vestments. If we got a report that there are suspicious persons around, we didn't. Only stole. It was, and many times we received the order from a bishop who told us, remove everything from your apartment, which reminds to some KGB's agents, if they come to search the house, some kind of connection with the church. Sometimes we did not have anything, and it was necessity sometimes.
Did you know a lot of people that got caught in the church, and what would happen to them?
Yes, there are. Unfortunately, there are. I can give you two names of two priests, Father Zofar and Father Gono. They were also priests ordained in underground church, and because they refused to betray some other priests and bishops, they were just killed, and they were found, especially Father Zofar, in his apartment, murdered, and Father Gono, he was killed in prison. He was pushed from 10th floor from some construction building, and obviously he died instantly. And there are many other persecutions. They were that the people don't have a salary advancement. They are watched constantly by secret agents. Then they couldn't travel so much. Only maybe last 2 years there is some change. That some people now can travel, and they didn't before. Okay.
Was it hard to get things for saying Mass with?
It's hard. Sometimes you have to be careful. Sometimes you couldn't use proper chalices. You had to use just glass. Sometimes instead of paten you could use only nice spoon. It was all what you could. It depended on all circumstances. Okay, it was not easy sometimes.
Are people watched outside, even outside the church, as closely, very closely, as far by the government?
Beg your pardon. Your question is if those people are watched very closely?
Or just the general public watched very closely?
Whom?
Just the average person on the street outside the church. Are they watched closely too by the communist government?
Ah, you mean, okay, I understand your question now. The point is, the communist system is based on perfect spying network. Every moment, every 10th adult person is somehow involved in reporting what's going on. They have so many reporters, so many older people who report, who spy, who watch other people for cheap money. And therefore communists, they develop the best, we can say, spy system on own people. Everywhere, every factory, every office, every school, almost every church has some professional spies who just have just one duty, to report to secret policemen everything what's going on, every suspicious movement, every anti-government statement. They have tremendous amount of information.
Are you restricted to have, gatherings and stuff like that?
Yes, it is against the law, and that's but we did it anyway, because you have to, if you want to function as a priest, as a church, how can you obey such laws? It would be impossible.
Was you there when the government was taken over by the communists?
Of course, I was there.
What was it like when they started out? Did they start out with, like gun control, or was no gun control at all? Was there any guns at all in the country?
No, in our country, obviously, people had many guns, but then it was very strict gun control, and everybody was obliged to bring a gun back to police station. Unfortunately, only those who were a member of the political communist party, they were allowed to keep a gun. Only those who were a member of militia, communist militia, they could have a gun, but good Catholics, many best Catholics, many leaders, they went to jail, to prison, or many best priests, nuns, they were concentrated in concentration convents, or they were sent to labor force camps. The best bishops, they were put in prison for 20 years, The communists, they immediately eliminated all kind of opposition, physically, brutally. There is no dialogue in those years. Then confiscation of private properties, the change of money, and then many other things, Then the church was prohibited to function properly. all religious orders were forbidden to practice, it was impossible. The bishops, we didn't have bishops, only those bishops who betrayed the church could function, and they were more serving the communism than the church. And therefore...
So it's a lot different here where they're just starting gun control and registering your guns and stuff like that, to where once they're registered, they know where to get them to take them away, right?
Yes, it seems to me, but here you have a little different situation, which we cannot put on the same level. The communists, they have a strictly political motivation. They wanted to get rid of opposition. Here in your country, you have a little different problems. That there are many crimes in the cities, which I don't know what is the best solution, because that every household has one or two guns, it seems to me also one extreme, But at the same time, also you have to be careful in your country that establishment wants to control innocent people who have right to defend themselves in self-defense, and they would have registered guns, and those criminals they would not have anyway. And therefore, it's not a simple question, which I still must struggle with.
How long have you been in this country?
You mean in your country?
Yes.
In North America or in the United States?
Or just North America?
North America, I landed as a landed immigrant in 1980. And therefore, in 1989, I'm 9 years and something more.
After being in this country 9 years, what do you see for us?
I said many times, only you Americans are the only hope for the world. But if you fail, there is no hope even for you, because I am a little disappointed how communist Marxist influence is taking ground in your country. It depends, everything depends if you Americans understand what is real patriotism, and if you try to defend the rights of majority of people here, if you try to help others against communism and other tyrannies, if you fulfill this duty of yours, you can be really greatest nation in the world. And if you don't help them, if you abandon them like you did during the Hungarian Revolution, during Czechoslovakian uprising, we can say, during many other uprising, people asked the United States for help, and obviously they didn't get help. And therefore it depends on you. If you want to be greatest nation, you have to help those poor people who are suffering, who are oppressed. I know after Vietnam experience it's not easy to wake up and to do something.
Could you expound a little bit on the killing and terrorism that they had in the country to the average people, or the people that were, how many people were killed in Czechoslovakia during the takeover?
No, the point is the best leaders, I can tell you exact numbers. The Czechoslovakia, Bohemia and Slovakia had in that time maybe 14 million people. And as I'm informed, from those 14 million people, 350,000 people were put in jail. It's quite a big number of population. And then, as we know, from those people, many people died in prison. As we know, 5,000 died, and because of suffering. But even those who survived, they became cripples, physically, many spiritually. They were broken persons. The prison sometimes can destroy personality. And a strong person came out from prison as a weak, who then served communists by collaboration with the secret agents. And therefore, The prison, when you are in prison for 14 years or even 10 years, it's not easy. You don't have food proper, you don't have a blanket, you suffer because of cold, undernourishment, and then psychological brutality, constant interrogation, constant pressure. But in Czechoslovakia, the killing was not so drastic. Oh, of course, if you also consider when the Czechs murdered 300,000 of German citizens in Bohemia, then you have a number much higher, you see. But if you look at the all communist countries, we know that they murdered in the past, or in existence of those countries, more than 150 million people just because of different political views or because they confess they believe in God. And therefore, the killing, the murdering of opposition is a part of Marxism. Is the official teaching. If you cannot change him, you can get rid of him. That's the Marxism. And we can say Marxism is based on hatred, on denial of your basic rights. Once they lie about God, there is no God, then what can you expect from them to be human towards neighbors when they don't respect God?
Did they use like food to control people and stuff like that?
Oh yes, first of all you have to work. Every man has to work. You are obliged to work. If you don't work, you go to prison as a parasite of the society. This is one of the means how to control people. Once you work, they know exactly what you do, where you are. They know that you cannot go freely around country and to organize some underground activities. This is first point. Second point is they know very well that even your wife must work because food is very expensive. There are many expenses. Now the communist system forces both parents to work. Another, you see the result, destruction of the family. Children don't get proper education because parents are tired when they come home, and it's a perfect tool for communists how to destroy family. Then you have food stamps. Sometimes you have a shortage of food. People have to wait 2-3 hours just to get 1 pound of bananas or potatoes sometimes. You don't have basic food sometimes. It's a part of communist economy which is bankrupt every day, every year. They must buy wheat and other food from the United States, from other Western countries. Economically, Marxism's absolute fiasco, failure. Spiritually, it's disaster, you see. That's the system.
Mm-hmm. Are the people allowed to own homes, or do they have automobiles or possessions like that?
Yes, you have to make distinction. There are communist countries which are part of Western civilization, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, East Germany. And then you have Asian communist countries. There's a big difference. You have to understand Czechoslovakia was one of the leading industrial countries before the Second World War. We started with cars to make cars in 1920s. And therefore we have a long tradition of technological progress. Yes, we are allowed to have cars, we are allowed to have even our own houses, but they are too expensive. Only those people can afford to have money for that. Majority of people just simply go and live in apartment buildings, huge apartment buildings. They pay rent every month, and they live in apartment building. There are villages. Obviously, in villages, everybody has a private house.
Do they have children working too, or are they made to work?
Children are not so much working. They go to school. The communist system provides free schooling. Even in high school, you don't have to pay anything. But To get to university, you have to use briberies to bribe the rector or dean of the school or college, otherwise you cannot get it. If you want to study in medical school, sometimes you have to give a new car for dean of the faculty, otherwise your child, or if your children are not, or if you are not member of the Communist Party, you have not so much chance, you see. If you are non-communist, then you have to use bribery and such stuff, otherwise your children cannot study. They have no chance. Then they must go to work manually and to do it.
A friend of mine was in Poland one time, and he said that over there you had to pay the money up front for an automobile, then you had to wait 3 years. There was no such thing as credit. You had to have cash in advance and pay the government. Was that the same where you're at?
How it was in my country. You can get loan from the bank. I remember that. You have to then pay some down payment, but then you can get loan, as I remember. Then what do you have to? You have to put your name into waiting list, and you have to wait for cars sometimes 2 years to get it 2 years. And they are very expensive. But you have to understand, people have cars because there is an absolute corruption. Everybody is stealing something, Everybody is stealing from state property. And the whole corruption brings money to people. Some people lose money, some people get money, The whole system is based on corruption.
In this country, the people don't really realize the fear that the people live under. Could you kind of give a little explanation of what type of fear that people would have living under a communist rule?
No, I can tell you very simply. You are a father of, for instance, 3 children. Your salary goes just for food. Now, your wife must work just to earn money to pay rent and to buy clothing. Now, can you imagine if you open your mouth and criticize the government, then you can lose your job, you can find a job for much cheaper money, then your family cannot survive physically. If you don't steal, if you don't rob somebody, we can say, you cannot make the ends of the means of the ends, how do we consider it? You cannot survive simply. Now, if you say something publicly against government, you have no advancement in your salary. Your children cannot study at higher schooling. You cannot travel abroad. You see, and therefore the whole system is based on so many restrictions that people just prefer to be quiet, to do what they are supposed to do. Only privately they try to express dissatisfaction in private circles when they drink good beer. That's all what they can do. There are many people who went to prison in 50s, not so much now. Now can you imagine mother with 5 children, husband is in prison? Can you imagine how she can survive? She must work very hard in the factory. She is tired, sick. If you are a farmer, your all property is confiscated. You must work on your own field for somebody else, for the state. You see? And the problem is, many people, where I told you 350,000 in prisons from 14 million people, it's a tremendous number. It's like you have, United States has 230 million people. It would be like, we can say, I can tell you, it would be, if 13, 26, almost 8 million people in prison, just because of political reasons. It's a tremendous number. And therefore, you are limited very much by your talking, in your gathering, and there are many bugging of your apartment. They wiretap, tape everything, your telephone calls. They open your letters. The whole apartments are wiretapped, backed by devices, bugging devices. The communists are experts for spying on own people.
You're saying that now that you live in Canada, Canada has become socialist too?
I think so. I think so. There are so many restrictions from government that it seems to me everybody who wants to start some private enterprise business is manipulated, restricted, and must follow so many bylaws, so many governmental interventions. And then I think the whole system of the minorities have more rights than majority of people. Then the whole politics, they are against apartheid in South Africa. They support some communist regimes in the world. And therefore the whole government supporting abortions, homosexuality, divorce, is a typical product of an atheistic philosophy. Every government who openly supports abortions, who openly supports homosexuality, who openly supports pornography, is, we can say, already socialistic.
A while back they had a program on that was talking about the average woman in Russia would have in her lifetime 4 abortions.
At least.
Would that be the same thing in Czechoslovakia?
Is getting in the same direction. In Czechoslovakia, exactly last year, they legislated absolutely free access to abortion. Up to last year, every woman should be approved, must have been approved by commission to get an abortion because of medical reason. Now it's not necessary. Every woman just go to clinic and get abortion. Just a consultation with her family doctor, and it's no problem.
At any stage of the pregnancy?
Almost any stage. Almost it's a disaster. That's the point. The communist countries, they, as a first, legislated abortions in 1953, the Soviet Union, 56, Poland, 57, Czechoslovakia, and then all Western countries follow the suit. That's the problem. That's the disappointment for me. Why Western countries must do the same as communists?
Was there the same problems with immorality and pornography and that type of and homosexuality?
No, these I must praise communist system on this point. In communist country you cannot buy legally any pornographic magazine. It is illegal. If you are smuggling and selling, you can have legal problems. There is no homosexual public marches like you have here. You don't have prostitutes. It's forbidden. You don't have Freemasons. They are not allowed to be organized legally. You see, this is we can say, you don't have immoral television like you have here. It's unheard in communist country to have a Playboy channel and those magazines and those videos. It's impossible. It's forbidden by the government. You see, that's only advantage in communist countries.
What about divorce rate and that type of thing?
It's the same like here. Divorce is especially in the Soviet Union, there are statistics from 1,000 marriages. Next year, or in 2 years, are divorced 870 of them. Incredible high rate. There is no respect for marriage because according to Engels, one of the founders of Marxism, communism, he says we must abolish traditional type of marriage because woman belongs to all men, not just to one man. And you can see in practice, it's incredible, you see. On one hand, you don't have pornography, but on the other hand, you have that type of morality, which is satanic also.
Let's say, for instance, a young couple that got married, would they be able to go out into get an apartment, or would they have to spend a great deal of time at home just to survive?
No, it depends. There are some factories which gives you apartments when you work for them. But mostly you have to wait again, as you said correctly, you have to wait in a long list for to get apartment. Now young people do it this way. They already apply for apartment when they are single. And in the next 2 3 years, maybe they can get married and then get apartment. You see, but you have to apply, and in your name in waiting list long ago you are married, and if you are lucky you have apartment. Then also you have the so-called you pay. You can buy apartments also. You can just give money to the state corporation which builds those apartment buildings. You pay them, but they are never your property. You just pay some kind of to have that apartment maybe soon a little bit than from when you get state apartment. You know, apartment is you can get it, but not easy sometimes. Some towns they can have easy access to apartment. Some bigger cities you have to really wait 10 years for apartment even.
Are the children, are they spoiled over there and a lot of sports activities?
Oh yes, the communist system base put quite a good, quite serious attention on sport activities. Again, part of propaganda. They want to represent communist system, and they want to show to the world we have better system because we have better athletes. But the whole system is based on the drugs, steroids. They take your children who are talented from your home, and they put in the state special school for those athletic children. You see your children only twice a year. They are brainwashed there. They exercise there like monkeys. Yes, they can perform then great effort. We can see that. But they receive atheistic education. There is an alienation with parents. What is the meaning of that, you see? That's the point. You know, they can be good athletes, but they are like robots, like monkeys. I think it's not ideal for your country to follow the same way because it is a disaster for family and for those children. They will be cripples when they are older, when they cannot perform perfectly. They can.
What about old folks' homes and euthanasia? Is that practiced?
There are many old homes for older people because, and more, unfortunately, once you have just small apartment, you as a child of your parents, you have your 3-bedroom apartments, you have 4 children, you don't have room for your parents. Then you have to get rid of them, unfortunately. We are against it. We teach people, keep your parents in your home. Doesn't matter how difficult it will be for you. If they knew to educate you, gave you life, you have to return back. But many people don't do that. They just get rid of own parents and put them in nursing or older person home. And as for euthanasia, maybe it is done, but it's not legalized and it's not done systematically. There is a Holland, Dutch, which they do officially almost, you know. But again, some doctors, some nurses, they don't care about patients. They kill them by negligence. If you don't bribe them, if you don't give them money, they will not treat you properly. As I told you about corruption. If you don't give to doctor bribery, some money under the table, then you don't get even good aspirin. You have no chance to get good treatment in the hospital. Everything is based on corruption. And if they perform abortions everywhere, like in communist countries, do they care about people when they kill babies so easily, you know? And therefore, I believe there is a euthanasia because of negligence, and not legalized, not systematic. I don't know about that.
What is the attitude of the Czechs according to the United States?
Czech and Slovaks, okay, as you know, we have two nations in Czechoslovakia, Czechs and Slovaks. An attitude of Czech and Slovaks towards the United States, some are very much disillusioned. They don't believe anymore that the United States can help them, because the United States betrayed many times those nations. As I mentioned to you, when Hungary in '56 had uprising, they begged the United States for help. The United States refused. Then, you know, after so many experiences with the Iranian Shah, who was friend of the United States, and he didn't get any help. Then after so many other incidents, when Czechoslovakia had the uprising in '68, there was no help from the United States. There are, you can see now, Marcos from Philippines, you know, and many other leaders who were former friends of the United States. They were kicked out by the Americans many times, you see. And therefore now there is not such confidence anymore in the United States. You have to prove it again that you really care about those poor nations. I think that the Europe does not trust so much as they did before.
Your Excellency, should we in this country fear communism as a reality shortly?
Yes, you should, because communism is a brutal system which destroys your dignity, try to convince you you are just monkey, you are just beast. Then in its theory about class struggle, you have to even kill those people who are still capitalists, who are still oppressors. You have to understand that communism, for instance, for young generation, it's a disaster. The hero for Soviet young people was a boy named Pavlik Morozov. He is put on pedestal as a hero for Soviet generation, young generation, and you know what he did? He betrayed his own parents because they refused to give private property to state cooperative farm. They had some kind of secret meetings. The boy betrayed own parents to KGB agents. They killed those parents, executed as a subversive element, and that the boy is the hero for young generation. Now, can you imagine if in your country you have that system that it would be okay for your children to betray you, you will be executed, and your children will be hero. It is absolute denial of Ten Commandments. You have to understand, communism is denial, is a contra Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments says, don't steal. They must steal. They must confiscate your property if they don't like you. Ten Commandments says, don't kill anybody. They are killing people because of political reasons, and thousands in the past. Not in the past. I must correct my former statement. In Asia, just recently, we had in Kampuchea, in Cambodia, when communists took power, they killed 1/3 of our nation just recently, just 7 or how many years ago. And look at Africa. In some Africa's nations where the Marxists are leaders, they are killing own people like chickens. You see, maybe in Europe, the communists now, they don't use those brutal means, but they send you into mental hospital. They can send you in psychiatric department without any reason. They force you to receive 5 injection needles, and they try to destroy your willpower. Then you are like vegetable. They do that. And therefore you should fear, because communism is evil. But you already have communism here in your country. It's not something which can come later. You already have people who are working for communism. They are just waiting for opportunity to take power. Even you have already people in the power who are supporting Marxism already. And therefore, we should try to get rid of them. We should fight them. But my point is, what is the cause of a communist mentality even of many Americans? Look at those singers, Jane Fonda, and they are Marxists since the Vietnam War, and those famous actor Eddie Asner, also lefties, and famous person who are supporting ideas against your own country even. And therefore, we should first of all fear our sins. Because if we don't eliminate our sins, communism will come, pornography will be spread even more, and all evils will be here. Only one way how can we get rid of communism and all other evils is to be holier, to be better Catholic, to avoid those sins, and to use God's grace to be stronger, not to be afraid. And if we accomplish that, then even our enemies will be trembling when they see Catholics who are strong, who cannot be brainwashed, who cannot be manipulated. And only God can give us that strength. Only God can make us who would resist those evils, you see. As my point is, we should fear first of all devil and sins which we can commit. That is the solution to communist question. I think the communism is punishment because of for our sins. The whole mankind is punished because of so many sins. Nobody took seriously Jesus Christ and his doctrine. Nobody took seriously Fatima's message of Our Lady, La Salette. That's why we are punished by communism. But if there is no communism, then we can be punished differently.
The answer is probably still the rosary, like Our Lady asked.
Not just rosary. It would be, rosary is part of the answer.
The start, yeah.
Rosary with conviction that you ask your Blessed Mother to intercede in her Divine Son to help us. And therefore we have to study our doctrine. We have to appreciate the sacrifice of the Mass. Then we have to pray Holy Rosary and to practice good moral life. Those are weapons which can help us. There is no other way. It would be not enough if we read all magazines, good books, forbidden books. It is not enough. We have many smart people in every country. You have so many smart people in your country, but it's not enough to be smart today. We have to also practice our religion, to do what Jesus Christ asked us to do.
Well, we want to thank you for coming in here, Your Excellency, and spending some time with us, and we sure hope you come back very soon.
Absolutely. I feel like at home here, and I don't see any difference, by the way. We are in the same box. We have the same enemies, the same problem.
Thank you very much.
Okay, God bless you all.